Imagine taking a big piece of cardboard and lighting the back right corner on fire and watching that fire slowly make its way across the piece of cardboard, and then the cardboard's gone. That's exactly what happens.
It's like fire underwater, burning through an entire ecosystem.
To see that many corals die in such a short period it's shocking.
Coral reefs are fighting a terrifying new battle, and they're losing.
Something is destroying them.
It had almost 100% mortality rate once corals were infected with it.
Something fast.
Just continuously advances. This is a nightmare.
Something deadly.
An estimated 50 million coral colonies were lost.
Something contagious.
It started up near Miami, and since then it has covered not only the entire Florida Keys, but the entire Caribbean.
Coral reefs feed Florida's tourism economy, provide us our favorite foods, and protect us from the strongest storms.
It's both a financial and a physical safety net for our community, and that's why it matters.
And that safety net is under attack.
It keeps you up at nighttime. You're watching something just melt away, literally in front of your eyes.
But before you lose hope, before you decide there's no chance for our coral reefs and the benefits they bring us,
just know this story is an ocean, and so far we've only seen the surface.
All these corals should be dead, but now they're not.
Because as we dive deeper, what you're going to see has the potential to change our world.
We can mitigate these problems. We just have to put our brains to it, work together as one big giant Caribbean team, and we need to figure this stuff out.
Stony coral tissue loss disease. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it's the name of the worst coral disease our world has ever seen. A merciless underwater pandemic born in Florida, packing the potential to erase both coral reefs and the benefits they bring us. Thanks for watching ABC 7 at 7. I'm Channing Frampton.
And I'm Elise Chingari. Coral is not a plant, and it's definitely not a rock. It's actually an animal just like you and me, and just like humans, it can get sick. And tonight, the disease we're talking about is killing these animals faster than anything we've ever seen before.
To understand this story, we had to leave the Gulf Coast. First, to the Dominican Republic, where a game-changing breakthrough promises to save our world's most important coral species before it's too late.
Then to the Florida Keys, where a Collier County nonprofit is funding restoration and research to save our reefs.
For the next half hour, we'll help you understand why stopping stony coral tissue loss disease is important for everyone who lives in Florida.
We begin in the Dominican Republic, where a new treatment using human medicine is showing huge promise.
you may not know the pillar coral by name, but when you see it, you'll recognize it.
It forms these kind of large pillars. They have super long tentacles on their polyps. And so to me, they kind of look like a little Muppet or like a shag carpet.
It's so iconic. If you ask a child to draw a picture of a coral reef, chances are they'll draw a pillar coral. These young artists did. The irony is, these reef-building giants are gone. Collaborative research shows that pillar coral is functionally extinct in Florida, thanks to something called stony coral tissue loss disease, which started right here in our state.
It started in 2014, and it rapidly moved both north and south along the reef track until we can find evidence of stony coral tissue loss disease throughout the entire Florida reef track.
Stephanie Schobmeyer is a research scientist for Florida Fish and Wildlife. She spent the better part of a decade studying the mystery of stony coral tissue loss disease and the way it's devastated our reefs.
We found there to be an estimated 50 million coral colonies were lost between 2014 and today.
Stephanie says losing these ecosystems means losing our Florida way of life.
We would probably not be getting as many tourists. We wouldn't have as many visitors to our state. The lack of reefs would impact storm protection. We would also lose quite a bit of our fish. You know, fisheries are very dependent on our coral reefs.
And it's a super spreader. After burning through Florida, the disease didn't stop.
Unfortunately, it's now spread also into the Caribbean. It's sad, it's depressing. To see that many corals die in such a short period it's shocking.
Even with a decade of intensive research, little is known about stony coral tissue loss disease. With no confirmed cause and no real cure, the disease has spread wildly throughout the Caribbean. Shopmeyer is just one of hundreds of Florida scientists searching for a win, a way to confidently treat the worst coral disease in the world. She found one, about 900 miles south of our state. Sitting on the white sand beach of Punta Cana within Iberostar's Bavro Resort lies the Wave of Change Coral Lab.
I can feel your stoke. It's contagious, man. Like you're doing your stoke moment right now.
Greg Pelos runs the place.
For me, it's just like I could talk about this stuff all day, so it's amazing.
There are two things this 27-year-old loves in life: corals.
Give me an hour of your time, and you will love corals.
And coffee.
A lot of it has to do with coffee. I love coffee. Dominican Republic coffee, especially in our resort here, the coffee's super good.
After seeing the dire situation in the Dominican Republic, Greg decided he needed to do something about it.
I was like, you know what? This isn't going to be the way. This is not going to be the end of this story. Like, I'm not going to watch this thing die. The whole thing. Well, the whole thing's dead on the reef. How much does that suck? Seeing that completely changed my thought process on how bad this disease has been, and it just put me in overdrive to want to try and figure out how to help it. Because I really care about these corals. They're unbelievable.
He says his treatment was born out of opportunity. After collecting samples of pillar coral on a dive, the unthinkable happened: an outbreak at the lab.
It was a drawn out, scared feeling, because I was like, please don't get sick, please don't get sick, please don't get sick. And then got sick. The first pillar coral that I've ever worked with was sick. And I noticed it, and immediately I tried something.
Greg turned to human medicine. He filled a bath with antibiotics, the same ones we use to treat strep throat, and plopped his pillar coral inside.
That's definitely the disease. The emotions were crazy. I mean, like a roller coaster, because I'm watching this coral, it sometimes looks absolutely horrible, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna die. This thing is just gonna die. And then sometimes I come into the lab and I'm like, wow, it looks amazing right now. Maybe this is gonna work.
And it did work. So well, in fact, the coral actually began to grow.
That's when it really hit me, where I was like, wow, this is crazy, because it is regrowing over where it was sick. Best part about that is that coral has almost quadrupled in size and is hanging out right behind me right now in one of these tanks.
This pillar coral proved its species can overcome this disease. In most labs, specimens are assigned a number, but in this case, it didn't seem right.
My colleague Ariadna from Mexico was here, and the first time she saw this coral, she said, wow, that thing looks really fluffy. And that's now the name of that coral, Fluffy.
This is Fluffy today.
Fluffy is thought to be, I don't want to say a little overweight, is what we've been told. Fluffy's very happy, let's just say.
But Fluffy's success was just the beginning. After proving the concept, Greg started a large-scale experiment with different species. Every single coral that survived the treatment made a full recovery and is still alive today.
It's really cool and really exciting for me and for our team.
We wanted to show you the treatment in action. First, we needed to find some sick corals.
Next at 7, we take you on the trip.
What's going on? Here's the plan for today. So if you take a look at this map here, you can see this is our dive site, Peñon. We're going to be dropping down at this buoy. We're going to be going north. Our first objective is to find this colony.
As we dropped down below the surface, the beauty of the reef became clear. With up to 100 feet of visibility, we swam through an underwater rainforest of corals. We saw colonies of all shapes and sizes, sporting every color of the rainbow. But as we swam closer, that feeling of wonder began to fade. Nearly every coral we passed was either sick or dead. Though the skeletons remain, the corals were no longer living. After searching the ocean floor for half an hour, we found what we were looking for, a wild, living pillar coral. This colony was nearly dead, the tips of its pillars barely hanging on. Greg and lab intern Camila went to work. Armed with a chisel, a hammer, and some Ziploc bags, the rescue began. They hacked off piece after piece, placing each chunk in its own bag to bring back to the lab. There, the corals were placed into quarantine tanks and prepped for treatment.
The best way to think about it, think about if you get a cut on your hand. You're going to first clean the cut, right?
It's the same process. First, blasting off the dead and diseased tissue to expose the bare skeleton.
Number two, then you might want to apply something that might kill whatever's there still after the cleaning.
Next, a disinfectant bath, part hydrogen peroxide, part seawater, to kill any disease or bacteria on the outside of the coral.
What would you do then over top of that to really give yourself the confirmation that you're going to have something that's fighting off and helping the recovery? Putting some sort of antibiotic topical cream on the cut and then putting a Band-Aid on it.
Finally, Greg mixes a cocktail of antibiotics and seawater and soaks the corals inside. After repeating the process for 10 days, the coral is cured. It's taken out of quarantine and put in a tank. Works great in a lab, but what about out in the wild?
There are in-the-water methods to try and treat this disease using an amoxicillin-based epoxy that you apply over the lesion. And that has shown some success at slowing down or stopping the disease on that part of the coral. But there have been many cases where other parts of the colony will then get sick. Maybe they're already sick.
That's why Greg is thinking big picture.
It's a very common topic in Florida as well, not just here in the Dominican Republic, but the preservation of genetics is becoming a really scary thing, where we need to figure out how to preserve pieces of these critically endangered species before they're gone.
Now he and thousands of scientists around the world are building what they call a genetic bank. Think of it like Noah's Ark for coral.
If you think about if all of the oak trees are dying, you want to create a seed bank, because if they're all gone, you're not going to be able to make oak trees again when they're all gone.
Right now, the banking process involves taking healthy corals out of their natural habitat.
Taking a piece when it's healthy, bringing it into a facility, hoping it doesn't have stony coral tissue loss disease, and then also hoping that you never accidentally bring it into your facility as well. I don't want to take super healthy, happy corals from the reef because they're doing great out there. So having this protocol available will hopefully allow for other organizations to go out and collect a bunch of sick corals, bring them back, and just make them better.
That could mean bringing a species back from extinction.
I don't want 10 years from now to say, hey, you know, stony coral tissue loss disease erased all of the pillar corals from the Caribbean. Like, hey guys, sorry, I really wish that we could go out and see a pillar coral in the wild, but we can't because they're gone. Because the disease killed them and nobody knew about it until it was too late.
Greg continues to treat sick corals every day, preserving pieces that would otherwise be erased.
Having that opportunity to that level of hope where it's like, hey, that thing's real sick. Let's make it better. And that's what we're doing.
And all he asks of you in return is to help spread the word.
We just want to spread that positivity, spread that excitement around corals that we can do something about it. We need to be talking about this at the dinner table. Like, all you families over there in Florida and all over, go have dinner with your family and talk about stony coral tissue loss disease. I don't know why I keep hitting that point home, but that would make me really happy.
We want to make something perfectly clear. Stony coral tissue loss disease is not the same as coral bleaching.
The difference is they're just literally different ways that the corals die, completely different ways.
Bleaching is a response to stress, like extremely high water temperatures. When it gets too hot, the coral loses the colorful algae that lives inside it, which makes it appear white. Bleaching is also a worldwide issue, whereas stony coral tissue loss disease has only spread from Florida to the Caribbean at this point.
Let's bring it back home to Florida. Our reefs might be in bad shape, but that's not stopping Florida's efforts to fight back.
ABC 7's Alex Howard is taking you to the Florida Keys to show you how a Collier County nonprofit is supporting efforts to make a difference.
I always say that I'm pretty sure we're the only United Way doing coral reef restoration, but we're also the only United Way that this matters to the people in our communities.
In the Florida Keys, water is everything. It helps families, the economy, and tourism stay afloat.
We help our working class, paycheck to paycheck families. We want everybody to move to a situation where they're thriving, and we provide the resources and programs that they need to do so.
Leah Stockton is the United Way's Keys area president. She knows coral reefs are critical to the Keys and the entire state of Florida, and that's why United Way supports restoration.
With so many people here in our community dependent on the marine environment for their financial stability and for their future, it becomes critical to the mission of our work, which is providing that financial stability to residents.
For years, the barrier reefs surrounding the Florida Keys have seen a shocking decline in corals caused by bleaching, pollution, and of course, sickness. The outbreak of stony coral tissue loss disease in 2014 was just too much for our reefs to handle.
That would be what I'd probably call the nail in the coffin for a few species here.
Kevin McCauley is the operations manager at Reef Renewal, a nonprofit that receives funding from United Way of Collier and the Keys. McCauley watched firsthand as Florida's reefs dissolved.
We've lost over 95, closer to 98% of the coral cover that we had down here since the 1980s. And at this point, we have less than 1% of the reef living.
And now he's on a mission to make a difference. McCauley and his team collect, nurture, and eventually outplant corals back into the wild to quite literally renew the reef.
So you can cut those into pretty small pieces we've found, all the way down to almost to one single polyp, and that will regenerate into a full coral eventually. Those are the corals we want to grow and plant to build the reef of tomorrow.
While there's been progress, your support is needed now more than ever through donations or hands-on experience.
You can come out for a day where we're fragging or cutting those corals to make them into those little pieces that grow up. You can come out on a dive boat with us and go plant those corals out there on the reef. We do a lot of stuff on land-based. If you aren't a scuba diver, we have a lot of opportunities on land.
Reef Renewal supports a larger project called Mission Iconic Reefs, an ongoing effort to save the corals of the Florida Keys. The United Way helped start the project through grants and a $3.5 million gift from the United Arab Emirates. McCauley says that kind of international collaboration is what will keep our reefs from disappearing.
Just like every ecosystem, these things are all connected. I mean, you start pulling one thread and the whole sweater comes undone, unfortunately. These are global climactic problems that we're facing, and we have to adapt our methods and our strategies to face these problems.
Reporting from the Florida Keys, Alex Howard, ABC 7.
Remember, you don't have to be a scientist to help our coral reefs. Something as simple as picking up trash on the beach can make all the difference.
We leave you tonight with the reminder that beauty still remains on our reefs. It's up to us to keep it from disappearing. Thank you for watching. Good night.